Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Read Good, Draw Bad, where we love to read really, really good and draw pretty darn bad. Today we are doing something a little different. We are doing a Think Good, Draw Bad video because I want to talk about a subject that is near and coldly dear to my heart. I normally really enjoy reading silly books all the way to challenging books that really make you think on this channel. But I have been so inundated by conversations about AI and AI tools that I really felt the need to talk about it. Because as a creator on YouTube, I am someone who is constantly marketed tools of ways to make me more efficient as a creator. Even though I'm someone with zero audience, which I'm totally fine with, I am someone also who is told many times that the promise of AI tools is that they will make me more efficient and therefore a better creator. So as someone who cares deeply about the human creation of art and writing and literature, I've been trying to mess around with a variety of these AI tools to see and discover if there's a way I could make my work more efficient while still ethically making sense of the work that I do, and which isn't just in creating these simple little videos about books. I actually have a huge problem with talking about AI creating, writing, and reading and efficiency. Let's talk about it. Here's the problem. We're constantly told that AI will make us more efficient, better at our jobs, and will remove the boring administrative tasks while leaving us room to grow on the creative or difficult thinking tasks. It's a wonderful promise that frames AI as an uncomplicated tool for the sake of progress. It's just all about efficiency. And if you know anything about productivity on TikTok or YouTube, it's all about maximizing gains. And we've probably all seen at least one 5 a.m. video where someone wakes up and throws ice water on themselves. I will not be doing that for this video. And of course, just to be clear, when I'm talking about AI, especially for reading and writing, I'm talking about large language models, which are something like ChatGPT or other models produced by Google or Microsoft. These tools are being used by white-collar workers or by people who are knowledge workers or experts in their fields, people who do a lot of jobs sitting at a desk, thinking, reading, and writing. These tools often fall into what is called knowledge work, where experts have knowledge that they want to share as part of the work that they're doing day to day. We're talking about these tools using massive amounts of data points and then determining what it thinks you want is the right answer and giving it to you in an easily digestible format. So while I've been thinking deeply on a personal level about how much I want to use AI in my life, I also think that it matters a lot for the future of literature and reading. And so today I think it would be really valuable to discuss the value of these super efficient AI tools and what it means for people like me who like to create, or writers and readers, and whether the value of AI tools really live up to their promise of peak efficiency. These AI tools and these AI systems and chatbots are not going away. Our tech overlords and the billionaire companies are too invested in it, both mentally, emotionally, and financially. So let's break down the problems of AI and efficiency into 3 general categories. First, let's talk about the ethics of AI. Second, let's discuss tools and how AI tools are being used right now. And third, let's discuss the future of reading, writing, and AI. And I think you'll want to stick around for that. Number 1, the work of AI. Let's get back a bit. I want to go back to the start of social media. And this was a very important time because communicating via the internet was actually pretty hard. We had websites galore, search engines worked okay, and Facebook was mining all of our data for everything we were worth. But the real industry shakeup for me was not necessarily that all of our social communication channels were changing, but instead something else. And that change for me was the death of the local newspaper. To make a long story very short, Google and Facebook tried very hard to capitalize on online journalism and make it profitable for their companies. What they discovered is that neither of these tech companies were very good at producing news sources and being profitable. And newspapers were slow to make the change to online writing, which was becoming sort of the norm in a day when online writing was free and easy to access, in comparison to a newspaper which you had to pay for with a subscription. Now, the reason newspapers were so interesting to me is because they form a whole job ecosystem of a bunch of specialized jobs that aren't really around without newspapers operating in circulation. Here's some common jobs that people could get at a newspaper from when I was younger. A news reporter in a niche subject area, copy editors, columnists for advice, fashion, or arts, news photographers, art directors, layout designers, newspaper machinists and printers, newspaper ad sales. These are a mix of what are considered sort of labor jobs or blue-collar jobs and knowledge jobs or white-collar jobs. So there's a whole ecosystem that lives here that allows for us to produce a good or service that is then provided to a local community, and then a lot of people benefit from that item, the newspaper, being around. These jobs, and by and large these stories, which were part of our communication models, have by and large completely ceased to exist. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and the Toronto online news web team is really just 3 chihuahuas in a Canadian goose jacket. Not exactly the pinnacle of peak Canadian journalism. The state of national and local news is not good, and here's an example from a Canadian source on jobs in Canada for newspapers and media companies. According to the Canadian Journalism Foundation, in the past 5 years, media job losses nationally have reached about 10,000 in Canada, according to preliminary data compiled by the Canadian Media Guild. Of this number, the print sector lost nearly twice that of the broadcast sector, 6,000 jobs versus 3,700. Categories included journalists, print plant workers, technicians, mailroom employees, salespersons, accountants, and managers. People, thankfully, had an option with the new sort of online journalism that was being created with online platforms that were free to use. And people could become sort of like citizen journalists, is what I think they used to be called. If they were reporters who normally stood in front of a Canada, some of them moved on to an online news journalist on a platform like YouTube. If they were a good photographer, they often moved onto photo platforms like Instagram and promoted their own work. If they were salespeople or marketing people at newspapers, a lot of their skills could transition onto online advertising and eventually into video marketing. So while there was huge disruption in the industry, there were still opportunities to create for individual creators, as online communities started to want to promote and to support their online artists of choice. And so the creator economy started to exist, where platforms like Kickstarter and Patreon and other platforms started to take up the space so that online creators could find financial ways to support the work that they were doing. Regardless of what you think about all the job losses in newspapers, people who are creators in some of these categories, in sort of the thinking, writing, and reading space, absolutely adapted to what was a new reality. People with skills and experience definitely flourished even through this area of disruption. Now, enter AI large language models, aka the super web scraper of our time. Now that we have all these creators creating all this free content for people to consume, AI tools have taken it to another level of industrialization of the knowledge that we're all creating. And I will say that social media platforms and online creators that use social media platforms are going to face similar problems to the problems of newspapers of the past, because a lot of those newspaper jobs got replaced by a lot of the requirements of being in an online space, and now a lot of online spaces are going to be forced to deal with working with AI assistants and AI influenced information spaces. Just for fun, I asked ChatGPT, how many jobs do you think you will replace in the United States? And here's its answer based on reports it pulled from McKinsey and Bloomberg. To make a long story short, from this graph, the median of jobs that are going to be affected is about 21 million jobs. And the people most affected are not necessarily going to be the tech sector, where code can be automated, but instead entry-level jobs, administrative jobs, or transitional jobs where people are looking for a better opportunity in a new industry or company. And I need to emphasize that, I know there's a lot of people who live in America, but 21 million jobs is a lot of jobs. That's not a rounding error, and it would have massive effects on local economies in ways that we probably can't predict. I think based on what ChatGPT says and based on what current reports say, these are 21 million jobs that probably will go away forever in the name of automation and efficiency. Now, if you wanted to be contrarian, if you wanted to sort of argue the point and say, maybe some of these jobs weren't so important after all, and some white-collar jobs absolutely are. However, it's not just in white-collar or knowledge-working jobs where the losses are going to be felt in terms of automation. The growth and spurts in AI learning and technologies and in robotics have been so incredible in the last 5 years that it's looking like a lot of manufacturing jobs are going to be lost because of AI and robotics. Here's a quote based on the current forecast of China and their manufacturing job sector. China is already working on so-called dark factories where no humans or light is required. China installed almost 300,000 industrial robots in 2022, accounting for 52% of the world's total, outpacing the US and Japan combined. It seems like China is going to do its absolute best to replace humans with robots that can work all day, 24 hours a day, at peak efficiency at all times. And this seems to be the trend of where manufacturing is going to go in the future. So when you think about all of this efficiency and about the millions, we're not talking thousands, but we're talking millions of potential job losses, you have to ask, what is all this efficiency going to do for the average person? When we think about AI and AI tools and efficiency, we need to come up with some statements that help us determine if the AI tool is good or bad for local people and communities. So I've sort of cobbled together what I consider my working ethical statement on robots, technology, and other efficiency AI products. If the AI tools or automated machines don't create a job for an expert in their field, it's not efficient. And I say this because efficiency often means that it helps knowledge workers or people who make decisions make better decisions. But if instead of making decisions, we're only left with a computer instead of a person, I would call that process not that efficient. And there are loads of examples online you can find of where people trust computers and things go badly. And the second statement I have is what I'm calling the evil technological supervillain test. Does your tool enslave, maim, or attempt to kill off people in the name of efficiency? Congratulations, you're a supervillain. If the AI tool or machine takes away one or multiple jobs in this new AI economy and doesn't give low-skilled worker new kinds of jobs, but replaces them with more expensive, energy-inefficient machines, it's not just inefficient, it's evil. But this is not to discount that these tools that we're creating can't be incredibly useful or efficient, but it's to notice then what's the difference between a tool being useful and a tool being harmful. Because a hammer could be a great tool to put a nail into a wall, but a hammer can also be used to really hurt someone. So if the trend is in 30 years from now, we're going to replace millions of jobs, what will all of those millions of people do? And how will they find full-time, good-paying work that they can do for 35 to 40 to 50 hours a week? In the future, does the job market actually look good for humans? Or does it only look good for investors? In my opinion, a lot of these tools and efficiencies that are being pushed are both anti-human labor and anti-efficiency at the same time. Because I think there's a natural human instinct to say that people are lazy and don't want to work, when in reality, a lot of people don't have opportunities that are available to them to create work that's meaningful in their lives. So how are we going to survive a technological revolution when that revolution doesn't involve people anymore at all? I think it's a question we really don't have an answer to yet. So the second problem, tools and AI. Now, there are some people that are hopeful that AI will make us more efficient, and it could be the case, because I don't need to know everything or have to do everything manually to make my life easier, better, or more efficient. When I turn on a light switch, I don't need to know how electricity works. Someone else did that for me. So maybe there are some scenarios where AI could be good when working in tandem with human creativity. So let's explore some of those scenarios. And for this section, I'm going to be relying heavily on an article titled, When Combinations of Humans and AI Are Useful, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. So in this article, they looked at research where humans were working with AI in different ways. The first way is a human-AI synergy, where the human AI group performs better than both the humans alone and the AI alone, which is analogous to a strong synergy in human groups. And the second example is where AI augments human activity, where the human AI groups perform better than just the human by themselves. So the research in this paper actually examines 4 different unique scenarios which might help explain whether AI is good for humans or not. Like, as a tool. Scenario A, humans work better by themselves with no help from AI. Scenario B, AI outperforms humans and therefore should be used instead of human labor. Scenario C, humans work better with AI supplementing their work. And scenario D, AI works better with humans supplementing their work and adding small pieces, basically. This is quite a long article and it's a meta-analysis, so it pulls in a lot of different resources and different research papers. But the gist of the article is that basically humans and AI don't work very efficiently together right now in pretty much any scenario. We run into a problem because of how AI systems work compared to how human psychology works. In scenario A, we are often left with the problem that we're not using the tools that are available to us, and therefore we reject any efficiency that we could possibly have. In scenario B, we run into a problem called the automation bias. When working on a task, AI tends to work with 100% confidence measure. When an AI system presents a solution with confidence, humans have a tendency to believe the machine, which is called the automation bias. We stop questioning the output and assume that the machine is correct. And this is particularly dangerous in tasks where the AI might be confidently wrong. And cognitively, as humans, I think we have a tendency to doubt ourselves in new or difficult tasks where we think that machines that are capable of much better calculations might do a much better job than we could do by ourselves. The real problem in scenario B is where we let AI do most of the work and we don't check any of its work. In scenarios C and D, however, we have a different problem, which is less about whether we do a good job of working with AI tools or if AI tools do a good job of understanding us, but instead I think the problem is going to come out is who is ultimately responsible for work when work of AI tools and humans work together. In scenario C, if you tell a chatbot to break into a bank security system and it's successful, are you technically liable simply for asking the question, since the AI is the one that completed the action? Most tech bros and brodettes would probably say that the AI could never be at fault and that humans should always be responsible, but that's really passing the buck. Because if you're just really good at writing ChatGPT prompts, does that mean you're good at your job or not? And for all those people who would say that they're great at their job because AI helps them be great at their job, does that mean you are good at your job, or does that mean that you're not necessary? From a creative standpoint and also from an innovation standpoint, I think we should always be thinking that the tool is not what makes something great, but instead the person who uses the tool to do what they need to do. From current tools and current research, we can say that creative activities and AI tools are not currently a good mix. And I think this is especially true if we talk about reading, writing, and AI. One of the great things for Gen X and millennials is that we had a lot of amazing print products for us, made for us by artists and writers as young people. And all our textbooks were made with a lot of thought and care for young people when they were being educated. If you know anything about current news in the publishing industry, you may have heard that AI slop writing is taking over a lot of online bookstores like the Kindle bookstore. In fact, there are examples of AI writers who are writing whole books and then slapping on a famous celebrity onto those books and selling them legally on the bookstore, even though it is against the terms and policies of Amazon and other sellers for you to commit copyright infringement or fraud. For the business of reading and writing, that's pretty concerning. It means you can't trust whether the product that you're getting is real and legit. But for me, the real issue is not necessarily with what it's going to do to the business of reading and writing, but instead what the tools that assist reading and writing are going to do to young people as they grow up in this new AI-generated world. And there are many studies backing up the idea that computers overall are a terrible way for young people to learn, and that books provide more neural links in our brains for deep reading. Traditional books allow for us to spend more time with text and don't normally allow for fast skimming of text like a web page does. There was a time maybe 10 to 20 years ago where there was a lot of news around a one laptop per child program, which was supposedly supposed to help young people increase their tech skills and close the technology gap so that young people could grow up and learn to use computers better as part of everyday working life. However, because of the way that screens work and the internet work, unfortunately, overuse of technology and underuse of books meant a higher literacy gap. So even though students were better at using technology, the literacy rates in schools for students are still falling. And this means that trending upwards over the next 20 years or so, we're going to see the ability of people to be able to read deeply and think critically decline. Because to read well and to read deep and to write and think critically are a very special kind of mental energy that all of us have in a very specific amount. And so as an adult, it's important for us to learn how to use this reserve of energy for creative and deep thinking, but a lot of the AI and tech tools do not only shortcut the version of deep thinking and critical thinking, but actually remove it entirely. I'd like to reference an online article where a college professor talked about how he sees the trend of students changing because of the technology they're taught as young people. Students won't engage in a 50-minute class because they have been conditioned since birth to interrupt all of their thinking with phone activity. Assigning essays is asking which student can write the best ChatGPT prompts because all of them are using AI to write their essays. Professors are told to engage more, be more engaging with multimedia content by administrators, instead of focusing on their actual job, which is deep thinking skills and research. Universities have a whole host of problems, which could be a whole other video, but I'm less interested in the problems of universities and more interested in the ways that young adults are thinking and how they think they can get ahead in today's technological world. The Atlantic published this viral essay in 2024 that basically concluded Harvard students were functionally illiterate. They were incapable of reading and understanding basic to medium difficulty texts that they were assigned in class. And this is pretty sad coming from one of the top schools in North America, where you would expect they're paying for a great education. Well, that and to probably, get laid. But I mean, let's be real, they're in university. And when you think about young people in university being unable to discuss difficult topics or difficult texts in depth, I start to get a little bit worried about what the future of deep thinking looks like. And a lot of these deep thinking, writing, and reading skills matter a lot for modern workplaces. And how will young people survive in these modern workplaces if they don't have some of those essential skills? Not every problem will be able to be solved by an AI tool. And furthermore, I think about the people who are the next generation, who are the people who are going to be working on advising and writing the next set of rules, policies, and laws. How will these people operate if they can't understand some of the difficult work, text, and writing that exists as they are right now? What kind of society will we be made of if we're not willing to be challenged by difficult writing? And you might think that what's the big deal? We all have used shortcuts to get ahead in life. And I agree with that. I think all students are always looking for the fastest way to complete their homework, to do a hard task so that they don't have to struggle. The problem is that in the future, there won't be a shortcut. There will be something doing all of the work for you, which means what is the point of you? And so if you don't care about any of those skills or about self-improvement or about merit-based achievements, the world starts to look a whole lot less like Star Trek and a lot more like WALL-E. And I don't want to live in this world where I'm only a consumer, but I'm also someone that contributes to the larger picture of what makes society worth living in. And I think most creators and most artists would agree with that statement. Let's talk about the future, if we let it be that way. Now, I watched a really interesting set of discussions on a term that helped me understand some of this feeling that I've been feeling for the past few years about the rising growth of AI technology and tools. And I'm finding this term more appropriate daily as the world we live in is governed by something called Technofeudalism. And this idea was put forward by economist and author Yanis Varoufakis, who said that capitalism as we know it is dead. What is coming for all of us in the future is in many ways to be in debt to all of these tech platforms that are rent-seeking in nature. And it will be a specifically small group of individuals who control all the infrastructure that works off of all of these cloud systems that power all of the technology that we're using today. And to complete the metaphor, in the feudal era, we'll sort of be serfs tilling the digital soil while owning none of it, but having all the expectations and responsibilities of someone as if we owned it. Capitalism, according to Varoufakis, has regressed to a system where not markets, but platforms control economies. And this means those platforms don't produce, but expect all of us to produce and therefore become rent-seeking platforms. You can learn more about this idea from a very good Epoch philosophy video that I'll link in the description below. And you can also watch a really good video of Yanis discussing his ideas with a popular British interviewer. And if you want, you can actually listen to the whole audiobook on Technofeudalism on Spotify. I think in the future, we will have tools of AI that don't work that well. The really high-powered, really good, useful AI tools will only be for the extremely wealthy. I don't see a future where all these tools meet the promise of all of the progress they say they're capable of. And I don't mean to sound so cynical about this, but if you look at the history of sharecropping, which I discuss in some of the famous books of the 20th century, or you look at how people are treated so that capitalists can produce a lot of money, you will find out that in reality, the promise is not as good as what they said it was going to be. There's a reason people want you to use these tools. These systems and the energy they consume are incredibly inefficient, and the amount of data centers required to power AI platforms and AI tools is well beyond the reach of a normal community. If you want this amazing tool, the question you have to ask is who's going to pay the price for all this progress? Here's some solutions, I guess. Regardless of all the doom and gloom that I've just pointed out. I think better legislation and regulation for AI products for young people will have better outcomes than doing nothing at all, which seems to be the current trend. We know based on research that has now been done on tablets and computers in the classroom that doing so had unexpected and unintended consequences for young people and their learning. I think eventually the research will show that AI has had a really detrimental effect on young people's ability to make critical decisions in the future without resorting to it as the first option. A lot of young people are going to be hurt by the fact that we allowed a large amount of usage of AI products in the classroom before we sort of figured out how best to use it as a society as a whole. Now, from a personal perspective on AI efficiency in writing, AI writing is going to become so much harder to avoid in the future. It's much harder to avoid the temptation of relying on AI to help us do difficult thinking, reading, and writing, because who doesn't want to push a magical button and have a best-selling book? That's what probably most of us would do if given the option. And for readers, unfortunately, I think AI writing is going to get much, much better. And this means that there won't be a lot of human authors left who are writing typical pulp fiction or fiction that's popular with everyday readers. So that means your favorite romances, your favorite thrillers, and your favorite mystery novels are probably going to be written by a computer in the future. I am sure the change is already happening of how publishers can use AI writing to put out as many books as possible to make as much money as possible. And until big companies feel pressure to change, I think AI novels are going to be something we see a lot in the future. I do think that the best work for change, and I do think the most positive change, is going to come from groups and individuals who are more vigilant against changes that will have negative outcomes. And these are people who are paying attention to the fact that 6-7 is the word of the year and pointing out that it is not the word of the year, it's a meme. Actually, that phrase is just numbers. Never mind, but you get what I'm saying, right? How 6-7 is word of the year, white is the color of the year, and Spotify Wrapped thinks I'm 65 years old, which I take great offense to, by the way. Anyways, you get the idea, words matter. And I think words matter now more than ever. On that note, I think I've made quite a long video, so I'm gonna end it here. But what do you think? Do you think that AI tools help you in your day-to-day work, life, and job? Do you think AI tools will be a big part of what you do in the future to keep sane and understand how the world works? Do you think AI tools are the future of reading and writing? Do AI tools make you more efficient in the work that you do or the work you would like to do? Personally, I often find I'm struggling to find any better AI tools than just the spell check in Microsoft Word. And I would love it if the Copilot AI assistant could be turned off. It really bugs me. But I'd love to know in the comments below if you use AI writing and reading tools and if they help you in the kind of work that you do day to day. Okay, well that's enough for today, but I just want to say thank you so much for watching this whole video. I normally make videos about old books and sometimes new books, but in the future I'm thinking of doing maybe a few more of these kind of videos once in a while. Now, I hope you have a fantastic week, one that's not filled with robot AI overlords, and I hope you get some excellent reading done. And as always, stay curious, stay reading.